This is the Data Privacy Detective. We're going to look at the month of September 2024 with our spyglass today. We're going to focus on two big developments. One is a staff report from the Federal Trade Commission, which was unanimously released by all five bipartisan FTC commissioners. Now, look, most staff reports aren't news, are they? But this one is. So let me give you the highlights. This one focused on social media and video streaming companies, some of the giants, Meta, Amazon, TikTok's parent company, other companies that collect vast amounts of our personal data and use it for their own purpose, but also share and sell it to other people, making billions of dollars in the process. About 4 years ago, the FTC ordered these 9 companies that had selected, these giants, to provide data so that the FTC could analyze the way that our data is being used and shared and misused in some cases and not protected adequately in others. That was the question that the staff asked. And after this data was gathered, the report finally came out in September 19, 2024. Well, it found a lot of problems. It found that there are vast amounts of data about us that are collected by these giant companies. Now, there may be no surprise on that, and it's quite interesting. The staff report details how it's collected, a lot of it without our real knowledge or certainly our express consent. And so there it sits, and there it gets shared in this data stream that's floating in different clouds in the dataverse. And what happens? Well, it isn't all good. It's used, it's misused in some ways. Of course, it can be hacked, like anything can be hacked. It can be misused. It can result in what the FTC chair called identity theft, stealing of assets of ours. And the FTC chair, Alina Khan, reported, based on the findings of the staff, how risky it is right now, given relatively lax controls of the data that companies hold and share about our personal privacy and how it then affects us in many ways, sometimes not for the best. That's what this staff report's about. It focuses a great deal on children. When I say children, they're now, for data, you have to think about this as those under 13 and those from 13 to 18, teenagers. Now, under 13, the federal and most countries that have a code certainly protect kids younger than 13 to ensure that the parent has approved and this sort of protection. But when you get to be a teenager, in the data world, it's treated differently. And teenagers are not, they're treated almost like adults. And we know that from adolescence, if we all were adolescent at one point, that there are problems with adolescence. Too many suicides, too many shaming, too much bullying, too much screen time, all the dangers that are reported in this staff report. And of course, the companies that profit by having people spend as much screen time as possible, they wouldn't resist that. That's not to say they don't care. Many do. Maybe they all do. They don't want to harm children. Anyone like to do that? No, no one would raise their hand. But it happens. And so the FTC staff report talks about the need for more federal legislation and state code legislation, if we don't have it, for changes to the Children's Online Safety Protection Act, and so on. This is a report that's not going to gather dust. After all, the protection of personal privacy has become a clearly bipartisan matter. It doesn't matter what color your state is. The legislatures understand this, and they're in the act already. A third of the states in the United States have pretty comprehensive codes. And I think the next Congress, 2025, 2026 will be the year we finally get a comprehensive federal data privacy code. And this staff report will be one of the reasons that it happens. Well, let's turn to the second development that I single out from September 2024, and that's California's act, which talks about neural data. Now, neural data is what goes on in our brain without our talking about it or writing about it. Brain waves, neural impulses. And devices pick this up. It may be a meditation device that you use, or maybe something that helps you sleep better and measures your brain waves during your sleep. It could be an MRI brain scan. It could be anything that picks up neural data rather than anything written or orally communicated. Now, it excludes under the California and the Colorado Act that was the first of the states to get into the neural data business. It excludes FDA-approved medical devices, but the FDA and Congress may want to consider what California and Colorado did about neural data. Neural data isn't something just inferred from something else. It's something picked up directly by a device to measure our brain functioning, our nervous system's functioning. And what does it do under California? Well, it amends the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, to put neural data, brain waves, on the same level as biometrics and precise geolocation information and other sensitive personal information about us. And that gets treated so that we have a right to know what's being collected from a company that's collecting it. We have a right to tell companies that collect it, don't sell or share it. We have a right to see reports about it. You can get a neural data report from one of these devices under the California Act when it becomes effective, which is very soon. And these rights to know what's being collected, what's being used, and then to opt out, telling, as I said, companies not to sell or share very private data about what's going on in your brain, unless you really want to do that. So individuals, when you go into the drugstore, that's what we call them nowadays, and the pharmacy, and you see all these over-the-counter things that'll help you sleep better or will measure this or measure that in your neural system. Think twice before you say, oh yeah, I'll just share all my data about that. Do you really want someone to say, oh, I didn't know John had a mental defect? Gosh, I saw that on somebody's website, and somebody else passed that information on without your even knowing how it happened. This is partly what's at risk. Partly what's at risk is your very identity, can be your brainwave thinking, how you feel, and are you really a good insurance risk? And I can go on. You can see how important neural data is, just as you would consider your health status and your financial assets to be sensitive personal information. This is worth looking at, and if you want more details, tune into our more 15-minute audio cast about these two big developments from September of 2024. And as always, dear listeners and watchers, protecting your personal data begins with you.